just before October 1st. McCarthy even floated the prospect of a short-term bridge that would give the House and Senate more time to reach a compromise on final spending levels for the year. If Congress fails to spend the spending levels by January 1st, it raises the possibility of a 1% reduction in spending for the year that will kick in at the end of April. So, hopefully President Biden and Democrats can find a way to solve the problem. Breaking news, everybody. The Biden administration has announced that more funding will be approved for the low-income people. Now, you may be eligible for this relief if you have been affected by the crisis, so be sure to continue watching because we have a lot of information on this. Although the U.S. has periodically sought to reduce poverty around the country since the 60s, roughly 35 million Americans, or almost 1 in 10, live in communities suffering from this poverty. For instance, universal basic income, known as the guaranteed income, would provide a regular payment to citizens whether they were in work or not. Amounts vary, but it would actually be a direct deposit into people's accounts. The idea behind it is that it would decrease poverty and prevent homelessness by giving everyone money through a subsidy. Outside of economics, it would give people the chance to work less and live more fulfilling lives and being able to choose jobs that they would want to do rather than what to survive. Criticism of the idea comes from the extra governmental spending that's needed to pay for it, as well as thinking it could be disincentives to work. However, research at MIT and Harvard found that these programs had little impact on employment behavior. Universal basic income is a different form when the stimulus check was happening. The money kept Americans afloat when they needed support the most. Several states have taken it upon themselves to approve direct need for the residents. In Worcester, Massachusetts is funding a universal basic income program using money from the American Rescue Plan Act. The Worcester Community Action Council announced that it would receive actually $250,000 in funding from the city to pilot a program that would give monthly stipend to a number of low-income households. During the 2-year program, participants will receive monthly payments between $100 and $500 on preloaded gift cards, which they could see use fit. Durham, North Carolina has actually improved the new pilot income program too. The initiative was approved unanimously by the County Board of Commissioners last week. It will give residents $750 a month and also will conduct surveys to gauge the outcomes. The program will be bankrolled using $1 million in funding from the American Rescue Plan Act. One of the requirements to be enrolled in the program was that the minimum household size must be at least 30% of the county's median income. The Biden administration is also continued push toward a new Internet for All 2023. This is the administration has announced $667 million in new grants and loans to build more broadband infrastructure in the rural United States. The 37 new recipients represent the 4th round of funding under the program, and it's dubbed the Reconnect by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Under the 37 projects, received $775 million in grants and loans announced in April and May. And according to officials, the money flowing through the federal broadband programs include what announced this week as the $42.5 billion infrastructure program detailed earlier this summer. It will lead to a new variation of the electrification of rural America. Commerce Secretary has actually told ABC News that the money would help about 8.5 million American households without internet access and millions more with unreliable access. Now, a senior Biden administration official has told reporters that it would create over 150,000 construction-type jobs, from laborers to electricians and communication workers. States have recently learned how allocations will work, with every state, as well as Washington, D.C., getting at least $100 million to fix the problems. So hopefully Biden...
I now yield to my colleague from New York, Ranking Member Ocasio-Cortez, for her opening statement.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Today's hearing is an opportunity to examine the federal offshore oil and gas program. The urgency to address federal fossil fuel development is undeniable as we endure the 6th straight week of record-breaking heat waves from Arizona to New York City. As it stands, the United States is the world's #1 producer of oil and gas and the 2nd highest emitter of greenhouse gas pollution. Our public lands and waters contribute nearly a quarter to those emissions. As the federal government, we have an obligation to make our public lands part of the solution to the climate crisis rather than the problem. The Outer Continental Shelf Act, which allows the federal government to lease lands in our federal waters, was passed to secure national energy security. With the support of federal agencies like the Department of Interior and the Department of Energy, our nation has pioneered offshore technologies that set the global standard. But the current arguments characterizing energy independence lose credibility when you discover that the United States is currently exporting 50% more oil and gas than we did in 2019, all while prices we see at the pump here at home and on our utility bills remain high. Why is that? Companies are profiting off of a volatile global market by pushing domestic prices higher, while communities here at home continue to suffer from the impacts of oil and gas development. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call an oil cartel.
Folks, there is a new Ford stimulus check, and thousands of Americans are set to receive checks worth as much as $2,500 very soon. Many of you are wondering whether your state will send you one. Well, I'll be sharing all this important information for the Ford stimulus payment in today's video. So continue watching. We got a ton of news about this. Since the IRS distributed the final batch of these economic impact payments to eligible individuals, the concept of a fourth federal stimulus payment has been under consideration. And there are several statewide programs that are in full swing or just getting started. The Alaska Permanent Fund dividend pays Alaska residents a portion of state minerals revenue in the form of an annual dividend to benefit current and future generations. Although the deadline is March 31st of the year for which you're applying, there are some exceptions. According to officials, applicants who filed an application online and have been determined eligible will receive a September 22 stimulus payment. That's until the end of October at least. In the Washington Working Families Tax Credit aims to offer financial support to residents for the state range from $50 to $100. Now, these payments will be allocated to individuals and families taking into account specific criteria like the income level and the number of qualifying children in the household. Furthermore, eligible recipients will have a 3-year window to claim the credit. Massachusetts has also already began doing this, and if you haven't even filed your 2021 return, you can still get a refund as well if you file by September 15. If you're eligible for a refund, you should receive it about 1 month after you file. The New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department started issuing rebate checks of up to $1,000 for married couples, heads of households, and surviving spouses, and even $500 for single filers. Eligible residents who filed a 2021 income tax return are not even declared dependent on another tax return if they will receive a payment automatically. The payment is actually a rebate for the New Mexico residents who have filed or will file. Now, experts have noted that Joe Biden didn't even offer much to student loans, but instead experts say that the president provided a watered-down version of the forbearance loan. More details on the previously announced update income-driven repayment plan and a promise again to help America out. Joe Biden said it would actually be discharging the loans for borrowers who've been in repayment for about 20-25 years under the program. But now, under the announcement from Joe Biden again, Biden has announced the programs of the day of the Supreme Court decision. Questioning remains about how implementation for this process will work, to help borrowers adjust their monthly payments and to restart in September. The president announced that the revamped program, which will last 12 months according to student loan experts, is actually a forbearance in many ways. It can help borrowers pay their student loans. Some advocates are actually recommending that they do not even use the on-ramp program, and thus avoid interest accrual. Now, during this period, borrowers who miss payments won't be reported to the credit bureaus and won't be considered in default.